call to order the Planning Commission work session for March 23rd. Roll call, Chair Simpson here. Vice Chair Kai is absent. Commissioner Widola?
Present.
Commissioner Bance is out. Commissioner Giles is out. Commissioner Harsh?
Present.
Commissioner Brown?
Present.
All right, we are here. So our first item this evening, now hopefully everybody's working on the revised meeting agenda where we've got residential design standards as item number, or the first, item number 2, which is right after call to order, which is technically the first task we're taking to tonight. So the agenda says it's House Bill 2002, but it's actually 2001. So I'm not sure if that's Joy or Erica doing.
It's me.
All right, Joy, I see.
Okay, I am actually going to share my screen with you. Can you guys see this? I just want to make sure. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Joy Chang, Senior Planner in the Planning Department. Tonight, I'm going to be discussing with you some draft proposed amendments that require input and direction from your commission. And staff is seeking feedback on the questions tied specifically to cottage clusters and residential design standards. So let me just move us along. This first slide shows 3 questions tied to cottage clusters. And I do want to let you know that I have received formal comments from Councillor Scott and Commissioner Bance. So I have noted that, and I'm taking notes tonight so that we can, you guys can provide us direction. So the first question that we have is cottage cluster. Should cottage cluster lots be allowed to be narrower, smaller than detached single dwellings? And just as a reference, cottage cluster buildings typically have a smaller footprint than detached single-family dwellings, and a narrower lot would allow for a sense of being clustered together. And the typical minimum lot width for a single-family resident is 50 feet. So that's why we're asking you tonight, should cottage cluster lots be allowed to be narrower or smaller than detached single dwellings?
So I saw the comments from the ones that had been submitted written, and we'll look for input from the other commissioners this evening. I was wanting to get perspective before we write code. There are some small lots near the target area, and I believe those lot widths are smaller. And if we knew what those average lot widths were and those sizes, it might help give us perspective as we go through the hearing process. Because I agree with the previous written comments that narrower, smaller lots make sense, but they need to be planned accordingly. And I think that's what we'll be doing with our design standards and our development standards when we get to cottage development standards.
May I make a comment here?
Yes, please. I was going to call the rest of the commissioners next. So go ahead, Commissioner Harsh.
So my own experience, as you all know, well, I think many of you know, I had a home at Detroit Lake that burned, and my home is on a 50 by 150 lot, and the house was about 1,800 square feet. And the city of Detroit has building code around these micro lots that I believe were maybe lumberjack shacks at the time they built the houses, at the time they built the 48 to 52 range. So the concern or question is, with the 50-foot wide lot, I'm finding it incredibly challenging. And the building code for specifically city of Detroit for those micro lots is the houses themselves can't be greater than 600 square foot. So I'm wondering if we put parameters around the size of these cottages like the city of Detroit did to keep those restrictions in space. I realize we've got a building height, so 2 stories and that kind of stuff as well, but I think that it makes sense. Now up there, obviously, we have issues like the lot size causes an issue with septic. So you've got a whole bunch of teeny tiny lots. that can't actually fit their own sustainable septic system. We don't have that, obviously, in the city of Sherwood. So it might be a little different, but I think a lot size, a structure size max of square footage might be relevant if you're talking about letting the lots get narrower inside these standards. That's just kind of my observation, having living this right now and trying to build a house on a 50 by 150 lot.
So Commissioner Hurst, that is actually, as far as the floor area discussion, is going to be item number 3.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. It is on there. I just wanted to make sure that we were addressing it. So these are a little bit bigger. So how small of a lot are we talking about lotting around 20, 25 foot? That's the height.
The question is really up to you, where I'm just basically identifying that our typical is 50 feet. But in order for the clustering to work, they would definitely have to be narrower.
I mean, that's kind of the whole point here, right? I mean, this isn't a regular house lot. It's a cottage cluster. So it's a group of lots arranged around a central area. The whole point of it, I mean, if you had to be 50 feet wide, then we're not even doing in this. I mean, you can't accomplish this goal with a 50 foot wide lot.
Right.
So what are we talking about? 30 foot with 5 foot per side setbacks? I mean, you're talking about 20 foot side frontage. I mean, what is the number we're looking for?
So I think what we're going to do is you will tell us, yes, the lot should be smaller. And we're going to be going out and looking at best practices.
Okay. All right.
That leads to my point of having getting a perspective of the project that's right next to Target, because I think those are 2,500 square foot lots, and if we knew what dimensions those were, that would help us make better informed decisions. Councilor Scott.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's good reference, but again, that isn't the same kind of development that a cottage cluster would be. But I think it's a good from a spatial reference point.
Right. Visually
I have a question about cottage clusters. Are they all actually independent lots as far as like they're separated into different tax lots when this cottage cluster is built? Is that?
No, they could be.
Yeah. Go for it.
There's options as far as they could be platted all individually, or they could be condominiumized, where the land underneath is all commonly owned, and individuals would just own the building walls from side to side.
So is that a determination that will be made by us in our code, or individually one developer could do a cottage cluster that's condominium style, and another one could do a cottage cluster that's individual lots?
Yes, it would ultimately be the choice of the development community as far as their application.
And then when they're platted as separate lots, what happens with the shared space?
It would be like common. Yeah, it would be like a common open space shared, like when you have like a neighborhood or pocket part.
I mean, it's
a separate lot. It wouldn't be part of any of the individual lots. It would just be a shared space but somebody's got to be responsible for it.
Correct.
Homeowners association or something.
I mean, this is effectively Villa Bois, right? I mean, this is effectively what that is.
No,
this
is a much, much smaller scale than Villa Bois.
I thought they were a lot of really small houses. Okay.
I mean, there's probably similar style of buildings in Villa Bois. I don't know if there's any cottage clusters technically, but
I'm having a hard time seeing this one. Sorry.
So good point to bring back specific examples in a drivable area. Commissioner Widola.
Yeah, thank you. The question is written. My answer would be yes, but I think to the conversation, we need to have better definitions on what we need and get there, and then keep in mind the purpose of why we even want to look at cottage clusters as far as the demographic that would be occupying ideally the cottage cluster, as far as either fixed income, low income, elderly, what have you, and just keeping all that in mind as we go through the rest of these questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown, I know you don't have a place to raise your hand, so I just want to check in to see if you had any comments on the narrow, smaller lot question.
Yeah, thank you. I guess my thought just when we talked about the cottage clusters, how they can be one tax lot, so almost like I want to say like a condo, or the individual tax lot, would that affect the residential zoning for those two options, or would that be something that the builder then applies for with their plan?
It wouldn't affect the zoning because these would be part of the middle housing, and they would be allowed once we adopt the regulations. So it really is an individual choice as far as the developer if they want to condomize it or to partition it.
Oh, okay. And is there like a pretty high need for the cottage clusters in Sherwood?
So typically cottage clusters are smaller in regards to the structure itself. A need in regards to possibly affordability because it is a smaller structure. I mean, I've heard comments from, especially during the comp plan update, needing more affordable housing, especially for empty nesters or even college students. So these would be ideal because they are smaller. So you would think that they would be more affordable. But just like with any small housing, even though this isn't a tiny home, the more fixtures you put in it and upgrades in regards to building material, the more expensive it is. So it truly does end up, as far as it typically is, less than a typical single family home because it's smaller.
Okay. So one of the other needs that came out of the comprehensive plan update was people aging in place in Sherwood and wanting to have single level houses as they want to stay near their family. They don't want to stay in their 2-story house anymore. So that was another need. So I don't know how volume wise, how much the need's going to be compared to how many single family detached we're going to continue. But it seems like it would be less need.
Okay. Those were just my 2 comments.
All right. So did we get, outside of the fact that you guys need to get a perspective of how large are those lots that were in the target area? I know that was a pilot project, so I don't have the, the actual dimensions for those. Outside of that, is there a consensus in regards to allowing narrower, smaller lots for cluster vesting?
I agree with Councilor Scott's comment that you have to have it, but we need to have specific examples of what cottage cluster projects are already in existence so we can look at what the size looks like, because that goes along with what does the common area look like in how many square feet per cottage unit needs to be into common space. It's hard to grab a number out of the air when you don't know what it looks like in real life.
Okay. So I do want to let you know that definitely the target area, the target development was not cottage cluster. Right. But there is a development in by Washington Square because the city of Tigard actually has cottage cluster allowances, and a developer did actually develop a cottage cluster. And I can definitely share that information with all of you, and you guys can either drive by or do a Google aerial view on that whole concept of that. And it is physically built.
Yeah, if you could provide the address, location, and then what the lot dimensions look like, how much square foot per lot, like we were getting an application.
Okay, great. All right, and then let's move on. Oh,
Councilor Scott.
Sorry.
I was just going to add that if anyone remembers the visual preference survey we did last month or so, there's a couple images of cottage clusters. One in particular is really nice. It looks really nice. I mean, the development looks really nice, and it also gives you a good sense of, the spacing of the units, the size of the units, and the common space. So that may be a good visual cue as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that is local.
I don't think it is, but it's a good picture.
Yes, but we could definitely share that again.
Eric.
All right.
Oh, I was gonna say there are some other local examples from the beach area, and so we can share those as well.
Can we have Commissioner Brown bring pictures back with her?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. So we'll move on then, if you're ready. So since we're really not getting a visual in regards to what all of these look like, so the couple of the questions that are coming up tied to cottage cluster might also have to be placed on hold, and we can continue the discussion. So one of the second question is the maximum height for these. Should we limit them to 25 feet or 2 stories? That is similar to the model code. Is the next question, and again, I compared to what we currently have, so just as a reference, and usually for the very low density residential to medium density residential, our current height standard is 30 feet or 2 stories.
Commissioner Widola.
I'd go back again to my original comments. I think the questions 2 and 3 sort of combined together is going back to the purpose of these cottage clusters. If it's for, the downsizing family or something along those lines, if we allow for 2 stories, 1,400 square foot cottage clusters, I think that's what the builders are going to build, because that'll probably be the greatest return on their investment. So, and then we can miss the mark of the whole purpose of this. So, my opinion is we should probably keep it to the original purpose of what we're trying to accomplish, or what's trying to be accomplished through this bill, and would be best for Sherwood.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown, did you have any comments on this one?
I think I'm just having a harder time visualizing like the use for the cottage clusters. I think if I see something, a couple of examples, that would be helpful. But I am like picturing, like what you said, the development behind Target, or even there's one in the Woodhaven community by the park. I think that those would be great. But I'm just trying to think of buyers who are coming in. And then I guess a little bit how much usable space they'd have, and if that would just maybe go to renters in the future. So I guess I'm having a harder time with this one.
Yeah. One of the visuals that helped me was a lot of King City. There are certain areas that have much smaller lots and smaller houses and on single levels. And I think some of the vision that I had heard before was getting that type of product in Sherwood, so people could age in place here. Am I off the mark there?
Oh, I like that.
No, you're hitting the mark, because typically these are the smaller. I mean, a family of 2 or 4 with 2 children. Typically a cottage would not be a selection, because it typically would be too small for them. And I do picture it would be the individuals that are aging in place, or, something that's more affordable for like a college student, or just the early individuals that just recently got married couples, without children. So there is that, the purpose of them is, typically if they are smaller, they should be cheaper, and they should be more affordable for those individuals.
If you Google cottage clusters and then just do an image, look at the images. There's a lot of I'm just looking at it right now. There's a lot of good and maybe some not so good examples of this that might help you visualize what these things may look like.
Yeah, as you guys are discussing it, I'm trying to get my Google page to look for those.
Yeah, I'm sorry to cause confusion. The target development, I was looking at it more towards how big the lots were, because those are 2,500 square foot.
I hope Jean's okay.
Yes, just choked up there. Yes, 2,500 square foot lots. So reduced setbacks and definitely came into the community with a development plan prior to approval.
All right. Do you guys want me to share what I just found in regards to the city of Tiger so that there is a visual, or should we just move on?
I wouldn't mind seeing it.
So yes, share. Okay. Oops. Can you guys still see me?
Yep, I see you and the presentation.
Oh, and the presentation. Okay, I'm just struggling here. Sorry. I'm just.
Do you have two monitors?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, you got to share the other one.
Yes, I am working on that right now.
Joy, would you like to share? I can share what I pulled up. The Salish Ponds development in Fairview.
Oh, okay. Can you see what I have up or no?
Yeah,
Not
we can
really.
see it now.
Yes.
Okay. So this particular example was, the image that we had, and everyone loved this because of the hands landscaping, and their common area is towards the middle. Here's another example where another common area. But yeah, Erica, let me just stop sharing and you can share yours.
Okay.
Can you scroll down to the bottom first?
Oh.
Yep, too late. Never mind.
Never mind. Okay.
Oh, we can go back, Joy, if you want to go back.
Like I can definitely go back here. Let's see. Bottom right here. So it would be these.
So yeah, that's a good image, I think, of how the cluster works in coordination with a bigger community.
Yes.
Yeah. So it would be here. And in this particular one, it doesn't identify if each individual is, well, from here, it looks like it's a condominiumized unit, just because usually if it was a tax lot, there would be carved, they would have lines, each unit has its own tax lot. But it could be. So yeah, that is how it typically would look like. All right, and Erica, do you want to share yours?
Sure.
Okay.
So this is the Salish Ponds development in Fairview, Oregon. They're built right next to Salish Ponds. And I'll just flip through some of the photos here. So as you can see, there's, common open space. These cottages are actually 2 stories. Around there, I think there's 9 cottages in total in this development. And they also have a community room, an open space as well. So I'll just flip through some of the photos here.
They almost look like what you hear referred to sometimes as 1.5 stories.
Yes.
I like that.
Out of curiosity.
So as you can see, they have a loft, which, is that 1.5 story type of development. So
Out of curiosity,
I like
Erica,
it because it. Oh, go ahead.
Erica, were you in Fairview when this went through through planning?
you know what? I was not. This actually occurred before I was there, but the developer, Mike McHugh, I know him, and we worked on a couple other projects that he was trying to put together in a similar nature.
This is very helpful.
I like the feeling of community. I looked it up online as well, and it keeps what Sherwood has been so protective over as they're expanding.
Yeah, and one of the options here too, as far as cottage cluster, is that they can ask for a community room with their development. So where they utilize it as a community. There's been even places where there's a community room where they also built a bedroom so that if you have out-of-town guests, since you have such a small unit, you can rent that particular room so that you can at least be in the same area, or your guests can be at the same unit or complex as you. So I think we got the visualization in regards to cottage clusters.
Can you send the link out to the ones you were looking at with the attachment of the picture that Joy showed us, and then can you get like the code itself that Fairview used that made that project possible? Because if we like that, if we had a starting place, that might give us a checkpoint to make sure we're on the right path then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, definitely. So I'll just kind of walk us through, and I don't even have to provide you with a slideshow just because we all know what we're talking about. So the third question had to do with limiting the size. The original proposal, the House bill itself, it kind of talked about a footprint of 900 square feet. But then the model code proposed an average of 1,400 square feet. That includes a community building. I made a comment to you guys as far as in the correspondence saying that averaging would definitely allow for a variety of housing styles and choices, and it doesn't limit it to the size of the 900 square feet. But again, the model or the House bill itself, it was 900 square feet of building footprint. So Erica gave you guys an example of the 1.5 story. So we were picturing 900 square feet on the bottom, and then if it was 1,400, it's the maximum. It would be an additional 600, if I'm adding right. No, 500. 500 on the top. 900 plus 500 equals 1,400, right? So that would be that 1.5 story. We can definitely provide you additional input on, what worked. Especially in Fairview and the example that I have in Tiger, so that you guys can get a feel of what are those typical and what were those standards, and if they did look good, maybe we should be following those guidelines.
Excellent. Councillor Scott, you have a comment?
I do, but I'd love to hear from the commission if they have any first on this point before I weigh in.
I don't see anybody's hand raised. Commissioner Brown, do you have any comments on the square foot? I guess, wait, before you answer, I wanted clarity. So you're saying a 900 square foot floor print is in the model code, which then would allow a second story?
Footprint, yeah.
It's a 900 square footprint. Okay, thank you. That's clarity. So Commissioner Brown, did you have any comments on the size?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Scott, you're up.
So I think we have to be I think we need several different ways to frame this one up. I think there needs to be a minimum square footage. I think there needs to be a maximum square footage. In addition to the footprint, the 900 footprint I'm fine with, but I don't like the. I think it was referenced as a 1,400 square foot average, which I think is way too high. If your whole development has to average 1,400, that seems like you're going to get potentially a lot of fairly big ones.
But that includes the community building.
Yeah, but what if somebody doesn't build one and then they have all these units that are 1,300 to 1,500 square feet? That feels like we're. My concern, if we don't have a maximum square footage, is someone's going to come in using this code and build a bunch of small lot big houses and sell them for 450 grand or 500 grand, right? And that's not really what the intent of the cottage cluster is. So that's all I'm getting at is I think there needs to be a maximum size, and we probably also want a minimum size because you don't want somebody building 400 square foot homes either. Probably, maybe you do, I don't know. But I definitely think there needs to be a maximum size, and I think 1,400 square foot average is too high. I mean, I would say, why not just have the code for the community building separate from being averaged out with everything else? That just feels wonky to me, because then people can manipulate that. Like, exactly. Have your average per the actual dwelling units, and then say your community room, can be no larger than 30% of the total square footage or whatever, right? I mean, some reference back to the development, but not have it averaged out with everything else. So I guess I said my piece.
Excuse me.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay.
Commissioner Whiteola has a comment.
Yeah, just real quick. I'm going to put a link in the chat box here, or the conversation box, to a Zillow listing for one of the cottage clusters that's about 1,000 square feet over in Fairview. So just people get an idea of what it looks like inside, what the loft looks like. So I'll just drop that in here real quick.
Perfect.
Thank you. And then you could add it to the email for the recap back to the commission at the end. Perfect.
You got it.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. The fourth question tied to cottage clusters. Should there be a limit to the number of cottages in the cluster? If so, what should it be? And typically, it starts at least 4 dwellings. Typically. But the way that the current model code can be anywhere, from 4 dwellings and can not contain more than 8 to 12 dwellings. But this is up for discussion. So,
can these be daisy chained together? So you'd have a cluster of 6, another cluster of 6, all sort of connected in a greater neighborhood scheme, or would that all be considered 18 in that example?
So I own 3 lots adjacent, or actually better yet, as I own a 15,000 square foot lot, and I subdivided into 3 5,000 square foot lots, and then put 6 clusters on each one. Yeah, I guess my first thought is, yeah, we wouldn't want 20 of them. But why not? If the market is such that it's demanding them at that level, and we have opportunity in Sherwood West to create pockets of housing, and if it's done,
my only concern would again come back to potential manipulation by a developer who sees it as an opportunity to circumvent the intention of the code and really build out some really high density housing that they can make maximum profit off of. And I don't think that's really what the intention here is. But I hear your point too, Gene, because I think that at the end of the day, if the market is driving that, then should we be preventing it? I don't know.
I'm struggling with it. I think maybe from my opinion, first off, I'd like to see a little bit more about what the other codes have in other communities that it worked well and didn't work well, and then maybe revisit it. Because I could argue both ways really easily. So.
Yeah. I think I'm visualizing this in my head, right? And kind of the selling point of these, or the focal point of these, is you've kind of got this central courtyard idea, right? This common space, and when you have 6 to 10 units around it, it's kind of cool. You've got this nice little neighborhood. If you have 100 units, you can't have 100 units around a single central courtyard because it would be enormous, and all your square footage would be a park. So you'd actually end up with 10 different sections of 10 around their own little courtyard, right? So you have 10 courtyards with 10 units around each of them. Isn't that an apartment complex at that point? I mean, kind of. I'm not saying that's a negative or a positive, but is that really the intent of what we're trying to do here? I don't know. But I see your point. It can argue both ways.
Yeah, and I think part of that, to balance the development itself, is to ensure that the community space, and that's an awkward one. We need a common area and or a community space that balances out the density, so we have affordable housing and I don't even know if it's attainable housing built for a market segment that is entering the housing market or exiting the housing market. So, and having, yeah, I don't want to keep arguing with myself. So, I went to the wrong screen. Commissioner Brown, do you have any comments on this one? Limit.
I don't think so, but I understand, like, it's easy to argue both sides on this one.
All right.
Okay. The next question tied to this is how much open space should be required per dwelling?
And I think that goes back to the comments we made before. We can't really get an answer until we have examples.
Okay, so then we'll move on. Should the cottage cluster common building be subject to existing accessory structures standard?
No, and I thought that we should have a new definition, because it's not an accessory structure, it is a common area structure. And later in your, because I have a preview of the draft language, in the draft language it says common area structure, and so I think we will need different
standards,
design and development standards for the common area structure, or the cottage common area structure. Because I guess in looking in that code, do we have language for common areas within apartment complexes?
Yes. There's going to be some new language in the draft. I don't think it's spelled out in the draft yet, but it's there. We've called it out.
Okay, so those are
okay.
It would be easy to mirror the
right,
and then there's no discrepancy between what we consider common area structures, whether it's for cottages, middle housing, apartments, or any other. Because I think of as an accessory as the shed that I have out back, not yes, a usable living space.
Yep. So the very last question tied to clusters is, should private streets be permitted to serve more than 4 units, such as cottage cluster? And currently our code allows for private streets that only allows access to no more than 2 units.
Commissioner Widola?
Yeah, sorry to be making so many comments. And again, this goes back to the purpose of the cluster. If they're aimed at the people entering or exiting the housing market, they may be fixed income, and adding the burden of the responsibility of maintaining the private road. that'd be a concern of mine of just not serving that segment of the market well by adding that extra burden to them.
Okay. Great.
Thank you. And then Commissioner Brown, did you have any comments on this one or the previous question about private streets or accessory structures?
No.
All right, oops, I've just done something. Okay. Which, sorry, I just clicked one too many times.
Okay.
I think 2 seems too restrictive, because I think as people start actually trying to plan these, they're probably going to need more than 2 at times. But you wouldn't want to open it up to be any number. So maybe there's to Commissioner Wydola's point, maybe there's a better number than 2, but not unlimited. Maybe it's 4. I don't know.
How are the common roads done at the pilot over by Target? Are those private or are those city streets?
There's no cottage cluster. It's not.
But it's the condensed housing pilot, though.
Those are all public streets.
So one of this particular question too is we are going to be verifying with Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue and our engineering department just to make sure that if, as we're building the amount of individuals accessing this private street, we want to make sure that emergency access can still be obtained, and that is definitely doable. So that you guys are familiar with that is something we're going to also be verifying.
Okay, because my comment was Bob Galati design standards. That's all I just wanted to make sure we didn't get in trouble with engineering. So I don't know if we have design standards for private streets of that size, and don't want to get in trouble there.
Yeah, we're going to verify that. Okay. Well,
it's interesting in looking through so many of these online ones that I'm seeing. There's actually very few private streets in most of them. Most of them seem to utilize like a common parking area instead of like individual garages, right? And so in that scenario, you wouldn't have a private street serving multiple cottages. You'd have a private street serving a parking lot or 2 parking lots or something. So, but recognizing that there may be some that want to have individual garages or parking spaces or something. So it's interesting. It's a lot of variety.
There definitely is. And I know the city of Tigard, they do share a common driveway where everyone parks and everyone else walks to their unit. So not they're not connected to their garage. It's a separate area. Okay, so that was it in regards to the clusters. And I have 2 last questions, and I'm sorry that we've already passed our allocated time, but we'll just continue on. These are very specific to residential design standards. So one question is, should the expansion of existing dwellings or the conversion of existing single-family detached dwellings be subject to the new design standards?
So I answered yes, but I put a caveat in there that they should be given some sort of grace for a separate variance process. So they wouldn't, because if their existing structure, like the one we did in Old Town, because the expansion, I wouldn't want Old Town has its own, has to come through hearing anyway, but if that same hearing process should not be applied to everybody trying to expand their house, if there's a variance process that allows someone to expand, meeting design criteria, but a administrative decision on the variance so that it's not cost prohibitive to allow someone to do something. But yes, in most cases, I think the design standards should be applied. Any other comments? Yeah, go ahead.
So So the other question too is if the expansion or conversion is in the back and isn't along a street frontage, would they still be subject to the design standards?
Is the building code enforcement guy going to see it?
They would definitely have to go in and get a building permit for the expansion. But if it's not a corner lot and they're expanding in the back and there's no changes into the street design, I mean, those are the questions as I'm looking at the code amendments. It's like, okay, what if? What does that mean? Is it right? Should we ask these individuals to go through a design standard if no one's seeing the changes?
Oh. And do our design we don't know what our residential design standards are to the back of the building. Our residential design standards are focused on the front of the building, so they may not even apply.
Right, so we could have a caveat that it is very specific to any changes that is at the street frontage, just
But then why would you have a design standard for a new building that has requirements for the back of the building? I mean, it feels like if you have a standard, that should be the standard, whether it's a new construction or an expansion, and then you can have a variance process, but you wouldn't just waive the requirement, or why would we even have it in the first place?
Right. But we don't. The residential design standards don't apply to the back of the building, right? Or did I read that draft code wrong?
Typically, they don't. The standards typically don't. But maybe if so if we're applying this to all of the conversions, maybe in the checklist would be saying, no is this conversion seen from the street? If no,
skip to the next step.
Yeah, you go to the go exactly that you skip, and not pay any fee in regards to the review.
Yeah,
because technically all of these standards are going to apply to every single thing, and that's why we're wanting to make sure, does it apply to these expansions or conversions also?
My point of view is, if there's a design standard, it should apply, but there's a variance process for expansions or remodels or whatever we want to call them, conversions. I want to make sure we don't catch up people, though, if like I have old windows and I'm replacing my windows and now I have to go through a design review. That's ridiculous, right?
Yeah, that is.
But if you're doing any sort of substantial, remodel, or you're adding a story onto your house, then yeah, you need to meet the criteria.
Yeah, even in Old Town, any changes for like, we're good with. They don't have to go through any type of landmark alteration because it's upkeep, as long as it's like for like. But whenever they're changing the colors and it's not within the earth tone, that aspect of it, or changing the roof style that's not allowed, then that's when we start looking at the reviews. But definitely anything for like, we would not be reviewing in any way.
Okay.
All right. And the very last question tied to residential design is, should there be a limit to rows of townhomes? If so, what should it be? Because currently our standards, so it's a group of no less than 2 attached, and no more than 6 in a block.
But is there a limit of how many blocks there can be? I was confused as to whether you're limiting the number of townhomes or limiting the number of blocks of them.
This refers to the number of units that are attached in one building.
Right? Yeah.
Yep.
It should be the same.
Perfect.
Okay.
I mean, other people can have opinions, but why would, yeah, we shouldn't treat them any differently than we do our existing product, correct?
Yeah.
I don't see any hands raised. Commissioner Brown, do you have any comments on the last two non-cottage cluster questions?
No, I agree with what you said, that they should be treated the exact same.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Harsh?
I mean, effectively, my only concern on this would be to avoid what is going on by Mountainside High School, is at the name of the high school, right? Where they have a bunch of townhomes that are stacked to the sky, right? I mean, it looks like something out of California over there, right? So as long as our code protects from that kind of density.
Yeah, Roy Rogers and Shoals.
Yes, exactly. That's, yeah. It's a nightmare. I can't imagine us looking like that. But so those are all townhomes, or what's another term for them? The East Coast, like
Row homes?
Yeah, row homes. Those are all row homes or townhomes, right? And they are built in 4 or 6 unit clusters, and then there's a gap, and there's another one, and I mean, there's got to be 1,000 million of them stacked on top of each other. And I just, you know, I think that's the antithesis of what we're about, right? That's all. I want to make sure that we're cognizant of that.
And from staff, how do you accommodate or adjust the code so that that particular product isn't overwhelming in a particular area? Because we would generally cluster higher density residential in one area, and if a developer came in, and I specifically thinking about Sherwood West, is there some way as we go through the Sherwood West process, looking at that, to break it up a little bit? And maybe I just throw it out there, you guys put a pin in it or put it in the parking lot or whatever you call it, because that is, I agree with Commissioner Harsh, that is a daunting area to drive through, and I can't imagine if Sherwood West developed in that same high density right on the street.
So I do know that the current proposed language talks about variety of housing styles. And staff has been discussing as far as, well, when can we implement that? And ideally it is like during the subdivision stage, where I know when I purchased in a subdivision, the project manager of that particular subdivision just made sure that all of the frontages were different, so that it looked like there was a variety, even though there was only 5 home models. So, you know, we're hoping that maybe we can incentivize the development community to do that variety of housing at the time of preliminary, just like we require plan unit developments to provide an architectural pattern book. Similar to that, if they can give us their variety at the time that they submit, will definitely help us in regards to moving forward in regards to the design. But the complexity in regards to a subdivision per se is that middle housing would be allowed in any of those lots. Ideally, if the developer can tell us which lots are for what type of development, if they want, as far as middle housing, if they want. But if anything, if they're all single family detached, the variety of housing plan that ideally would be submitted at the time of preliminary, so that they can at least get a discount and we can bless the entire projects and they don't have to go through that residential checklist for like the 200 lots.
Right, but your comment is that that's single family detached variety. If middle housing comes through, every single one of those would be a 4-plex, and then having to get variety off 4-plexes or townhomes and not having an entire subdivision of that.
One single type.
One single type of townhome. Yeah, you have
Right.
100 townhomes that
Right.
are canvassing the entire area. So,
I have
Commissioner Brown.
There, so I recently worked with a publicly traded builder, and we were up against a large street similar to Roy Rogers, and the street inward, we created townhomes, but every block, it was a different style look. So one block, it was almost like a New Orleans style. It's similar to like what you see in Villebois. And then the street further in, they were smaller single family detached homes built. And then as you got further in, you had larger homes similar to what you would find in Woodhaven. So it was almost like the reason why they created that on a busier street was a sound barrier per se. But it wasn't similar to like what we see in Roy Rogers with the condos and then the townhomes and then just that extra layer. But a lot of these big builders are trying to stay with just the townhomes on a busier street as a sound barrier to protect the investment almost as you go inwards.
That makes sense.
Detached single family.
Well, that's also the least valuable real estate in the development. So they're gonna, they're gonna put the townhomes out there. So I think it serves a dual purpose. Yeah. So I think we're getting a little bit. It feels to me like I think there's an element of what we're all trying to talk about protecting against. There's an element of that wrapped into design standards, but I think it's the bigger piece of it is through the zoning code and PUD code and the master plan or the concept plan that we're going to, work on for. I think that's where most of these goals have to be accomplished. I think there's only so much we can do through design standards. Mm-hmm. And one of my fears about Sherwood West, perhaps my biggest one, which I keep talking about to everybody who will listen, is I'm really fearful of something happening like similar to what happened with Denali, and although on a much bigger scale, right? Where we get these individual lots come in through the PUD process one at a time, and they're all technically, following the concept plan, but they don't really, as a whole, really meet the goals of what the concept plan, holistically was trying to achieve, right? And I'm really fearful of that. I don't know what the answer is, but I think we need to make sure when we look at this concept plan that we have a really, really good concept plan that is enforceable and has teeth and will force a cohesive development to meet the goals in the entirety and not have each lot come in one at a time through the PUD process, shirk their part of the responsibility off to the next one, and then when we get to the end, we're all disappointed in the result, and that would be catastrophic in my opinion. I don't know what the answer is, but we need to solve that.
Agreed. Thank you. All right. Any more comments on the questions that Joy has for residential design standards, cottage clusters, and townhomes?
I'm good.
All right. Thank you, Joy.
Excellent. Thank you. And we will definitely send you guys the links that we were referring to earlier for your reference. So thank you. And we'll come back to you with updates.
So just for clarity, the cottage cluster amendments and that draft language will be coming back to us at a hearing at the beginning of next year. But we are going to continue to plod forward with our citywide design standards coming to hearing in the next month or two, correct?
Correct. And as far as next steps, we are in the process of drafting the open house, and it is going to be virtual. So we will be discussing the residential design in addition to the housing types for the House Bill 2001. So that's going to be sometime in April.
All right. It's already almost April, though.
Yes.
I don't know how that happened, but it is almost already April.
It's been a year.
Yes.
Since COVID.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. We're on to Erica, maybe? Are
All
you doing
right,
the comprehensive plan?
So before we dive into the draft infrastructure goals and policies, I just wanted to give a brief update about where we are at in the update process. We are currently in the last block of the comprehensive plan, which is healthy and valued ecosystems. This block really focuses on parks, open space, air and water, quality goals and policies. We have a survey up online, and we pushed out that survey through all of our various methods that we've been doing for the past year. That survey ends tomorrow. I do know that the last time I checked to see how many people participated in that survey, which was last week, we had about 160. So I haven't checked, but I'm expecting we're probably over 200 possibly at this point. Our next and final technical advisory committee and community advisory committee is on April 7th. And we're going to be wrapping up this last block, as well as, discussing the process that we've gone through the past year and a half, and just reflecting on, the good, the bad, the ugly. It's been a learning experience for everyone, especially during this past year, dealing with COVID, and really focusing on being strategic in our public engagement activities. What else? I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to send this out to all of the commissioners, as well as our project advisory team for the comp plan. And I just wanted to go over what our draft table of contents actually looks like right now. Here it is. All right, can everyone see the screen? And I can make it bigger if need be. Okay. So this is our draft outline as it stands now. We are going to have a letter from the mayor about this project. Our table of contents, our chapters, is our first chapter is what is the comprehensive plan, why we're doing it, how we developed the vision for the overall plan, and some language about how we read the document and how it's used over time. Then the next bigger chapter is all about Sherwood. So we're going to talk about Sherwood's history and the historic context of Sherwood. And we have this really great footprint of Sherwood and how it has grown over time with our, present landforms that are here, as well as, the existing infrastructure, such as the railroad and Highway 99. And we're going to talk about the landforms and also provide a land use gallery, really showing the different types of development and where they're located in Sherwood. This is going to be probably the most graphical part of the plan document itself. Lots of pretty pictures. And then from there, we're going to be moving into the comprehensive plan themes, and those are the our chapters that we've been working on for the past year and a half that are outlined there. And then we'll have our reference documents, such as our HNA, EOA, our old Goal 5 map, and then we'll have our acknowledgements, and then a history log where we can, input when and why the comp plan has been updated. And then the appendix, and what we envision the appendix to be is really our background documents that we have for each one of these chapters. Does this make sense? Are we missing anything? And you don't have to tell me now. Like I said, I'm going to be sending this out. You can review it, think about it, and you can send me your comments.
All right, thank you for sharing that. My question is on the comprehensive plan themes. Are they, so you've given us a draft, like that's what we're going to be discussing next, I'm assuming, the transportation, the theme, the vision statement, the goal statement. So the 3 pages that we have,
Yes.
is that what each one of those sub bullet points? So the coordinated and connected infrastructure, that section is only going to contain the final version of these 3 pages and no other information?
We, what I envision is probably a little tiny, preface for each of the chapters. But, really each of the chapter, the block themes are really going to focus on the goals and policies of the document.
Okay. Okay, that's perfect. Yeah, because I think we've spent so much time on this document to add more to it. We'd have to be careful to make sure we craft it, so it doesn't change context of what the rest of the document says. So,
right. So in your packet tonight, we have the draft coordinated and connected infrastructure goals and policies. You last had a work session with City Council in regards to these policies, and we just wanted to bring these policies back to the commission, for any further refinement, for any comments that you may have. I sent them out to you last week. I did get some comments back from Commissioner Bantz that I sent back to all of you. He said, well, his comments were that he supports the draft goals and policies that have outlined in this packet material. His only comment was that we are still calling out our service providers, I believe, in policy, or actually it's a goal 5. And I just wanted to highlight that if we want to change that goal language, we can certainly do so. But that goal language actually came out of our 2018 visioning work. So I just wanted to, really be transparent in the fact that this came out of that visioning work that we did in 2018. And we can have that conversation whether or not we want to change that language or not. It's all up in the, you can do whatever you want to do.
It is not set in stone.
It's
Commissioner
not set in stone.
Commissioner Widola has a comment on that.
Yeah, and on that goal number 5 is, because things change. For example, Frontier's gone now, right? So that's going to date our document that's supposed to be a 20-year vision plan. So if there's a way to come up with the generic terms of what these agencies do and what they partner with us. But I also had a very specific question on this as well, because I think I've missed it in the 3 or 4 times I've seen it before. But has Willamette River Water Treatment Plant always been named in this grouping and I've just been looking over it, or has that been added and that's new?
You know what? That is a great question. I will double check and see if that was in our visioning.
Does any other commissioners remember?
I don't.
For some
And
reason,
I usually have my vision statement right on my board here in the office, but I took it home.
Well, it's kind of weird because it's the one thing I had underlined other than Comcast and Frontier, because one of them doesn't exist. It's Ziply Fiber now. So,
but I'll look into that. But we can definitely come up with more generic language, I think, for that goal.
Okay.
Are there any other things that are sticking out?
I have
like a sore thumb.
Commissioner Widola, and then I have a couple of ones. Yes.
Chair Simpson, I'm willing to share the time and let you have a question, because I do have 4, 5, 6 questions overall through this document. Do we want to go a section at a time, or do you want us just to unload both guns and go for it?
Let's just do it a few sections at a time, because then I'm on the same page. So I have printed, packet page 17, there's 3 policy on the bottom of that page. One policy 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3. And if we hit those one at a time, small groupings like that, and then we'll flip over and do the next page and finish it up. But I have a couple of comments on the first 3.
I'll go ahead and concede the floor to you and let you go first.
Okay. Policy 1.3 is a repeat to policy 2.3. In my opinion, did I get the wrong multimodal? Maybe I got the wrong one. Multimodal. No, they're similar enough that I felt it was unnecessary. Promote access and utilization of a multimodal transport, and then 2.3 is provide convenient and safe transportation and ends providing multimodal access to businesses and residents. And what I was thinking, we don't need to duplicate that. But what we did miss, I think, in that section, I'd substitute for a new idea here, but was dropped from the previous one, which is encourage the development of self-supporting neighborhoods, providing a wide range of land use activities within a single area. The reason for that particular section in the transportation is to reiterate what we're trying to do in the rest of our comprehensive plan update, which is to make small nodes and neighborhoods, and we need our transportation to support self-sustaining neighborhoods. And that was in our previous transportation vision.
It was. We can add that back in.
All right. And then I don't see any hands raised. Commissioner Widola, we'll go right on to your questions then.
All right, just going back all the way to packet page 9 and the vision statement, if you will. And this is just curiosity question, but we have no mention of Vision Zero, which is more of a national movement around transportation safety. Is that intentional? Do we care? Do we think that's going to be something that times out over time? But that's for those of you who aren't familiar with Vision Zero, that's sort of the national USDOT's goals around decreasing traffic fatalities down to 0. And so I don't know if any of the work we want to do want to tie into that or leverage any of that activity, but it was just a question.
My thought first off is it's kind of some of those other things that came up as a buzzword now, but in 20 years, is Vision Zero going to still be something that we know about?
Good question. Yeah. All right. Fair enough. I just wanted to ask the question.
Yeah. I think it's try to see if we can incorporate it into one of our other safe. We have multiple policies that deal with safety within the community. Maybe that's where we can, because we're supposed to work with local and other regional sources. Maybe we can find a way to incorporate the USDOT Vision Zero in that section. Locally and regionally, we could put it in the policy 2 section or goal 2 section policy. I let Erica dig something up and maybe adjust it for next time.
Yeah, I'm making a note of this and I'm keeping it on our we can come back to it. I'm making a note. I can draft up some language that we can review later on. So I'm just putting this in the parking lot.
And I'm not looking to make work for anyone here. I do professionally. I've done a lot of work in that space, and so I was just curious if we've evaluated. I think Gene makes a great point, or Chair Simpson makes a great point that we, is it going to be a buzzword that loses its momentum over the next few years, and in 20 years, people are going to be like, "What's Vision Zero?" So I get that. Just wanted to bring it up.
Perfect. So the rest of Goal 1 has policy on the top of page 18, policy 1.4 through 1.7. And again, I feel that policy 1.5 is a repeat to policy 3.1, which talks about implementing it in a timely fashion, kept up to date with the respect to local and regional.
Yep.
So I think they're a repeat. And the other comment I thought Commissioner Bance had was the recrafting of policy 1.6 was just a little we're trying to look at it a little differently. So I thought prioritize, I think remove incorporation of, I think just stating prioritize street design features in 1.6. Sorry, did I say that?
Got it.
Prioritize street design features and techniques, that sentence, that promote safe, energy efficient, and comfortable travel. And I'm incorporating the energy efficient because that was mentioned several times in the transportation plan, but not incorporated in this document.
Perfect.
And then on policy 1.7, I don't know, I would rather promote traffic calming mechanisms within the city of Sherwood than electric vehicle charging stations, but I don't know if promote the development of, and we had this conversation before, a general term of advancing technologies, including electric vehicle charging stations. I don't know if I'm making it more complex than it needs to be.
What number are you on again?
1.7. It's promote the development of electric vehicle charging stations. And it's 20 years from now, are the electric vehicle charging stations what we all have to have, or is there going to be something else between now and then? So we promote the development of emerging technologies, including electric vehicle charging stations. So.
Yeah, and I think the conversations we had around that last session was around, what I remember is as an EV owner too, is some of the feedback and pushback you get from some people that they live in apartments or condominiums and there's no charging options for them because it's, there's no incentive for the owners of the buildings or the managers to put that type of infrastructure in, which helps the adoption. So, but to your point, well, I don't think the EVs necessarily will be going anywhere in the near future. I think that's going to be a mainstream technology moving forward. That's my personal opinion, of course. That I think we're okay with that, but alternative vehicle power stations or something like that. That the language can be played with there if people feel more comfortable.
No, I don't care either way. Just threw it out there. Commissioner Brown, before I move on to Goal 2, do you have any comments on the first set of policies from Goal 1, policies 1.1 to 1.7?
No, I don't. I think you guys covered everything.
Okay, well then we will move on to Goal 2, policies 2.1 to 2.5. I only had one quick wordsmithing, which was on policy 2.2. We've been trying to not provide, but support.
But support,
Yeah.
Right.
And maybe this would be a better place to, there was a policy or an action item from the previous transportation plan was to ensure mechanisms for traffic calming. I don't have the full language in front of me. So if we're going to create safe and viable transportation options, maybe we should ensure traffic calming mechanisms are in place, because I don't know if that's been completely hammered out within the community development department, has it?
I believe Bob has standards for traffic calming within the community.
Okay. All right. Any other comments on Goal 2? I don't see any hands.
Sorry, that I do. And I when I went through all this, I had a note on, when it comes to some of the key locations and TriMet being our partner in this region for mass transit. Do we want to consider anything around, the big areas, the ice rink, the YMCA, things that are not on the TriMet route, or do we want to draft? I don't know why I didn't bring this up before, and I don't want to create work. And if I'm just driving things off topic, please call me out and say no. Let's not consider that. But linking those things to mass transit for more options for people to get there instead of just basically Old Town, Taco Bell, and then out you go. But we're going to try to find out, if there's ways to get more stops in some of the better locations and a bigger footprint. And I know that's a big conversation to have with them and probably a lot of pushback. But that was something as I was going through that came to my mind is connecting those things like that, the YMCA, the ice rink,
our activity centers.
Yeah, exactly.
That's yeah. Where is our is that policy 2.3?
2.3. I can definitely, Commissioner Bidola, tweak that language to include, like activity centers.
Actually, just a new policy in that section that addresses mass transit and promote or encouraging connections and additional stops within the community. I think there's something in the action plan from the old transportation plan that talks about it.
Yeah, I think that's what.
I think there is too.
That way I don't have to try that way I don't make up something on the fly.
It's okay.
Thank you. That's a really good policy to add. So you guys did a really, really good job of taking what was in the old transportation plan and what was our new vision and trying to pare it down. So this was pretty amazing in the fast work that you did this for. So any hand raise for goal 2, or Commissioner Brown, do you have any comments on the policies in goal 2?
No.
All right, then we're moving on to goal 3. There's on the first page is policy 3.1 and 3.2, and I made it 3.3. How's that?
That's great.
Sorry. I don't see any hand raised. On policy 3.1, the language of that item is not in the same context or sentence structure as our other ones, so I would propose that we use manage the transportation network in a manner that ensures the plan is implemented, so that it's the same action items like we do in the other policies. And then at the halfway through that sentence, ensures the plan is implemented in a timely, economical, and environmentally sound fashion and is kept up to date with respect to local and regional priorities. Again, from the previous transportation plan language, both economics and environment were incorporated into the policies, and I think we were a little weak in those two areas in our language. And then the last one on 3.3, because this goal talks about identifying funding resources and collaborative partnerships, I think 3.3 should be ensure new development mitigates adverse traffic impacts and contributes towards the transportation improvement remedies. I used the words that were in the old transportation plan as a policy.
Right. Okay.
Anybody else have any comments on goal 3 policies? All right, then I'm going to move on to goal 4 policies 4.1 to 4.5. That's public facilities. And I didn't even make a single ink mark on there. But I ran into a question, so I don't see any hands raised. But
got
I am, oh, there, Commissioner Widola. Go ahead.
And I put it in another section because I think I was looking at the old draft instead. But and we sort of have it, but I don't know if we want to call it out. But we're looking at policy now 1 and 2 basically, or 4.1, 4.2. But do we want to tie in as a strategic long-term 20-year vision goal? Is it too specific to tie into the new water treatment plant that's for Beaverton and Hillsborough, and state that as a goal to change to secure alternate water resources for the city of Sherwood or something along those lines? If there's we've got that great facility that's being built in our city, and we've talked about the idea of eventually someday tying it into Sherwood's water. Is that something we want to put as a goal, or just kick the can down the road? I don't know. That was something that came up in my mind when I was reviewing the materials.
I like that. I like, even if we don't call out that plan, either securing additional or creating a redundancy in our water system. That's fabulous. Okay, so my confusion, and I got my pages all completely messed up here. On the packet, page 14 and 15, there's public facilities and services, and then there's an energy one, and there's policies relating to energy, but those policies didn't end up on the final draft. I would have assumed that they were on page 19, or there was a page 20 that didn't print.
It's because we decided that these energy policies were actually going to be in, some of them are going to be in this current chapter that we're working on, our healthy and valued ecosystems. And then some of the other energy objectives here are already mentioned in, oh my goodness, I'm trying to, what block is it? Hold on one second. They're in another block, and I forget what the block name is.
Oh, I'm looking at the plan themes. Comprehensive plan, thriving and diversified economy, heritage, governance, housing, infrastructure, ecosystem.
I think it's in our governance where we talk about how we grow and energy efficiency, but I will go back and double check where we put those. But I know that we separated them out into two other block areas.
Okay.
So, for example, objective, like policy 3, objective 3.3, where it talks about lighting, that's going to go in our ecosystem block that we're working on now. So these energy policies in this section have been separated into other block areas that make the most sense.
Okay, so then we need to change the title on the page from infrastructure and energy to infrastructure.
Just infrastructure. Yes.
And I'm noticing it looks like under energy in the old draft, objective 1.4 looks like it's now the exact same wording for policy 1.7 in the new draft. And that's the promote the development of electric vehicle charging.
Yes.
So that one's accounted for.
There we go. Okay. So
we really took a deep dive into the long list of goals and policies that we had, narrowed them down, created a focus, and then put them where we thought would make the most sense.
okay,
So those energies, so some of those energy policies did get dispersed into other comp plan themes or into the transportation section.
okay, so for my OCD, can you just send out where they ended up going?
Yes, I will do that.
And then 5.4, the sentence itself is not clear. Collaborate with governmental and private agencies engaged in climate change and energy conservation efforts and seek ways to expand its role.
Maybe.
In whose role? 5.4, sorry.
Oh, right.
And seek ways to expand its role and influence. Whose role? I don't think the policy is clear.
It is not clear. I will go back and double check.
Yeah, policy 5.4, and then we don't have any other policies that have A and B subsets. I mean, it's either a policy or it's two policies. Because we can make policy 5.4 be develop and implement an energy conference.
And A is an action item anyway, so that shouldn't be there at all. We're really trying to get to take out action items.
Right. Collaborate with governmental and private agencies engaged in climate change and energy conservation efforts.
Let's see here. Policy.
To seek ways to, I just think I don't need to wordsmith it right now. It just, when I read it, I didn't know who it was. And I think it's the two action items, or remove it and make a different action item. So
that's great. I've noted it. So
when it comes
put
back
that on the parking lot to come back as well with some new verbiage.
Okay. All right. I don't see any hands raised. Commissioner Brown, do you have any comments on goal 4, 5? General comments?
I don't think so. I think that we've kind of covered everything at this point on those goals.
Cool. All right. That was a longer meeting than promised.
But shorter than normal.
But shorter than normal, and I think, accomplished quite a bit where we're going to be done and able to move forward. So, commissioners, do you want to see this one more time for what Erica does, or wait till it comes back to us in the final document? It's like crickets. Did I freeze?
No, you're there.
I think Erica froze.
Question.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Frozen?
Yeah. No, you're not. Keep moving. So do you want? So once you incorporate these, Erica, do you want to just send them out to the commission, and we can not have a work session on it, but just make any Scrivener comments back to you?
Yes. And so what I'll do, Jean, is I'll go up and I'll mark up the documents, and I'll make those markups in red, so we know at our next go around, those are key items that we would want to review before moving into a hearing. because I suspect that we're going to have a couple work sessions to go over the entire document before we move into the hearing for adoption.
Okay. Any other general questions or comments on the agenda item of comprehensive plan update? All right. We can adjourn unless Erica has any more announcements or comments or insightful wisdom for us.
I have none. Upward and onward.
Woohoo! All right.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you very much,
Good night, everyone.
commissioners.